Single dad night guard let a desperate woman hide in his office. Her FBI badge revealed everything. And in one heart-stopping flash, the man who thought he was helping a stranger realized he was standing beside someone running from enemies powerful enough to destroy them both. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The rain drummed against the museum's windows like an endless round of applause. Ben Carver sat in his small security office, the glow of multiple monitors casting blue shadows across his weathered face. His daughter Sarah had packed him his usual thermos of coffee, and the familiar scent helped keep his mind sharp during the long night shift. The Charleston Historical Museum was different after dark. The exhibits that drew crowds during the day became silent sentinels in the shadows. Ben preferred it this way: quiet, orderly, predictable. After 23 years in the Marines, he'd had enough surprises. For one lifetime. He checked his watch, 11:42 p.m. Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the rain-streaked windows. The storm had been building all evening, and now it was really letting loose. Thunder rolled overhead, and Ben instinctively sat up straighter, his eyes scanning the bank of security monitors. That's when he saw it. A flicker of movement on camera 3, covering the side entrance. Ben leaned forward, adjusting the monitor's contrast. There it was again, a shadow, distinctly human, moving near the staff door. Years of training kicked in. Ben grabbed his flashlight and radio, though he kept the radio silent for now. No need to call for backup until he knew what he was dealing with. His footsteps were nearly silent on the marble floor as he moved through the darkened halls, past glass cases filled with Civil War artifacts and displays of antebellum Charleston life. The side entrance was around the corner from the museum's pottery exhibition. Ben slowed his approach, listening carefully over the sound of rain beating against the building. There, a soft tapping, barely audible. Someone was definitely at the door. He positioned himself carefully, flashlight ready but not yet illuminated. "Security," he called out firmly. "Identify yourself, please." A woman's voice came through the door, shaking with what sounded like fear. "Please, I need help." Ben moved closer to the door's small window. Lightning flashed again, and he caught a glimpse of a woman's face, pale, frightened, and completely drenched. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, wearing what had once been professional attire but was now soaked through. "Ma'am, the museum is closed," Ben said, maintaining his professional tone while studying her carefully. 23 years in, the Marines had taught him to read people quickly, and everything about this woman's body language spoke of genuine distress. "I know, I'm sorry," she said, her teeth chattering, "but I need somewhere to hide, just for a little while. Please." Ben's hand tightened on his flashlight. Protocol was clear. The museum remained locked after hours, no exceptions. But something in her voice, the raw fear he heard there, reminded him of civilians he'd encountered in combat zones, people who genuinely needed help. "Hide from what, ma'am?" She glanced over her shoulder into the darkness. "I can't. I just need a safe place, just for tonight. Please." Ben stood there for a long moment, years of training warring with his instincts. The woman hugged herself tightly, shivering in the rain. Another crack of thunder made her jump. "Stand back from the door," he said finally, pulling out his keys. He opened the door just enough to let her slip inside, then quickly secured it behind her. In the building's light, he could see her more clearly. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, mascara running in slight streaks down her cheeks. She wore a navy blue business suit that was completely waterlogged, and she carried no purse or bag, unusual for a professional woman. "Thank you," she whispered, her arms still wrapped tightly around herself. "I didn't know where else to go." "Follow me," Ben said, leading her through the silent museum. He noticed she kept looking over her shoulder, jumping at small sounds. Her heels clicked softly on the floor, despite her obvious attempts to walk quietly. In his security office, Ben grabbed the emergency blanket he kept in his desk. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "You're soaking wet." She took the blanket with trembling hands, wrapping it around her shoulders. "I'm Vivian," she said softly. "Vivian Taylor." Ben nodded, pulling his extra chair out for her. "Ben Carver. Would you like some coffee?" "It's still hot." Vivian sank into the chair, clutching the blanket tightly. "Yes, please." "Thank you." As Ben poured coffee into a spare cup, he watched her in the reflection of one of his dark monitors. Her eyes darted around. The small office, taking in the neat desk, the row of security screens, the photos of his daughter Sarah. "Military?" she asked. noticing his ramrod straight posture and the Marine Corps poster on the wall. Marines. Retired now. He handed her the coffee, which she accepted gratefully. Want to tell me what brings you to my museum on a night like this? Vivian's hands tightened around the cup. I can't. Not right now. But I promise I'm not here to cause any trouble. I just need somewhere safe until morning. Ben studied her for a moment. His training told him to press for more information, to call the police, to follow protocol. But something else, the same instinct that had kept him and his men alive in combat, told him to wait. All right, he said finally. You can stay here tonight, but I need to do my rounds, check the building. Will you be okay here for a few minutes? Vivian nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Yes, thank you, Mr. Carver. I mean it. Ben, he corrected her, heading for the door. Just Ben. As he walked through the familiar halls of the museum, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet night shift had just become considerably more complicated. He'd broken protocol by letting her in, but something told him it had been the right call. Still, he made sure to check all the entrances twice, paying special attention to the security cameras covering the building's exterior. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the museum, an uneasy quiet had settled. When Ben returned to his office, he found Vivian had stopped shivering, though she still clutched the blanket tightly around her shoulders. She'd finished her coffee and was staring at the security monitors with an intensity that suggested she wasn't really seeing them at all. The storm's supposed to last all night, Ben said, settling back into his chair. You might as well try to get some rest. Vivian gave him a grateful look but shook her head slightly. I don't think I could sleep right now, but thank you for everything. Ben nodded, turning his attention back to the monitors while keeping Vivian in his peripheral vision. Whatever had driven this woman to seek refuge in a museum on a stormy night, he had a feeling it was just the beginning of a much larger story. Thunder rolled outside as Ben made his usual rounds through the museum's dimly lit corridors. The security lights cast long shadows between the glass cases filled with Civil War artifacts and colonial-era furniture. His footsteps echoed against the marble floors, a sound he'd grown accustomed to over his 3 years working night shift. Returning to his office, he found the woman exactly where he'd left her, curled up on the worn cot he kept for his occasional breaks. Her clothes were still damp from the rain, and she shivered slightly in her sleep. Ben's paternal instincts kicked in, remembering all the times he'd covered his own daughter on cold nights. He reached for the spare blanket he kept in his locker. As he gently draped the blanket over her shoulders, her wet jacket shifted, and something caught his eye, a flash of metal and leather. Ben's heart skipped a beat. There, clipped to her belt, was an FBI badge. His muscles tensed, years of military training kicking in. Moving with the quietness that had once kept him alive in combat zones, Ben carefully reached for the badge. The woman didn't stir as he examined it under the dim light of his desk lamp. Special Agent Vivian Cross, he read silently, running his thumb over the cold metal shield. The photo matched her face perfectly, no sign of tampering. This was genuine federal credentials, which meant either very good news or very bad news. In Ben's experience, it usually meant the latter. He had just slipped the badge back when she jolted awake, her hand instinctively reaching for her hip. Her eyes were wild for a moment before focusing on Ben's calm face. Easy now, he said, keeping his calm, voice steady and his hands where she could see them. I think we need to have a conversation, Agent Cross. The change in her demeanor was immediate. Her shoulders tensed, and her expression hardened into something more professional, more guarded. You found my badge, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, ma'am, I did. And now I need to know exactly what kind of trouble I've led into my museum. Ben pulled his chair closer, but maintained a respectful distance. I'm Ben Carver, former Marine Corps. Whatever's going on, I'd appreciate the truth. Vivian sat up slowly, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to Ben's face, assessing. I'm working undercover, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Or I was, until tonight. My cover was blown. There are people looking for me, dangerous people, who have connections I never imagined possible. Ben nodded slowly, reading the genuine fear beneath her professional composure. Human trafficking, he said, connecting the dots from recent news reports about FBI operations in the area. Yes. Vivian's hands clenched in the blanket. We've been building a case against a major ring operating through the port. Tonight, I discovered that someone high up in local law enforcement is involved. Before I could report it, they made me. I barely got out. She met his eyes directly. I know I'm putting you at risk by being here. I can leave. No, Ben said firmly, surprising himself with how quickly he made the decision. Not in this weather, not with people hunting you. He stood up and checked the office door's lock again. You can stay until morning. My shift ends at 6 a.m. We'll figure out your next move then. Relief flickered across Vivian's face before she caught herself. Thank you, but you should know these people. They won't hesitate to hurt anyone who helps me. They have resources, connections. Ma'am? Ben interrupted gently. I spent 20 years in the bed. Marines. I've seen my share of dangerous situations. Right now, you're in my museum, under my protection. Get some rest. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes. Vivian studied him for a long moment, perhaps seeing beyond the security guard uniform to the soldier underneath. Finally, she nodded. Thank you, Mr. Carver. Ben, he corrected, moving back to his desk. Try to get some sleep, Agent Cross. I'll keep watch. Vivian, she offered in return, lying back down on the cot. And? Thank you. Not many people would help a stranger these days. Ben turned back to his monitors, checking the museum's perimeter cameras. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about being smart, he said quietly. It's about being human. The storm continued its assault outside, but within the small security office, a fragile trust had formed. Ben settled into his chair, his senses alert for any sign of trouble. On the cot, Vivian's breathing gradually steadied as exhaustion won out over fear. The night stretched ahead, full of uncertainty, but Ben's decision was made. He'd learned long ago that some battles choose you, and when they do, you face them head on. The first rays of dawn painted the Charleston sky in soft pinks and oranges as Ben's shift came to an end. He stood in the security office doorway, watching Vivian gather herself. Her clothes had mostly dried overnight, but exhaustion lined her face. I can give you a ride somewhere, Ben offered, his voice gentle but cautious. My truck's not much, but it beats walking. Vivian hesitated, then nodded. Thank you. I shouldn't stay in one place too long anyway. They walked through the employee parking lot, their footsteps crunching on wet gravel. Ben's old blue Ford pickup sat alone under a flickering light. The truck had seen better days, with a few rust spots dotting the fenders, but it had never let him down. Sorry about the mess, Ben said, opening the passenger door. He quickly moved aside a few of Lily's school books and a small tackle box. My daughter sometimes uses it as her mobile library. Once they were both inside, Ben turned the key. The engine coughed to life with a familiar rumble. As they pulled onto the empty street, Vivian sat rigid in her seat, her eyes constantly checking the mirrors. Want to tell me what's really going on? Ben asked, keeping his voice steady. That FBI badge isn't just for show. Vivian's fingers tightened around her bag. I've been working undercover for 18 months, she said quietly. Human trafficking case. Big operation, but someone inside the bureau. Her voice caught. Someone sold me out. Ben's jaw tightened. The rain had stopped, but puddles still dotted the road, reflecting the morning light. You're sure about that? Only 3 people knew my location. My handler, his supervisor, and… She pressed her lips together. Doesn't matter now. They knew exactly where to find me. I barely got out. Ben noticed her words beginning to slur. Slightly. Her head bobbed forward before she caught herself. When's the last time you really slept? He asked. 3? Maybe 4 days ago? Vivian's eyes were struggling to stay open. I can't. I need to keep moving. Ben watched her fighting consciousness and made a decision he hoped he wouldn't regret. Instead of heading downtown, he turned the truck toward his neighborhood. I've got a guest room, he said firmly. You need real rest. Can't run if you can't think straight. Vivian tried to protest, but her words came out mumbled. By the time they turned onto a street, she was slumped against the window, finally losing her battle with exhaustion. Ben's small bungalow sat on a quiet street lined with live oaks. The morning sun filtered through Spanish moss, casting dappled shadows on the neat front lawn. He parked in the driveway and gently shook Vivian's shoulder. We're here. Let's get you inside before any neighbors see. He helped her to the side door, supporting her. Wait, as she stumbled slightly. Inside, he guided her straight to the guest room at the back of the house. Rest here, he whispered. I'll check on you later. Vivian barely managed to kick off her shoes before collapsing on the bed. Ben pulled a quilt over her and quietly closed the door. In the kitchen, he heard movement and the familiar sound of cabinets opening and closing. Lily was up, getting ready for school, as she did every morning. Ben took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and walked in. "Morning, Dad." Lily's bright smile greeted him. At 12, she was already showing hints of the woman she'd become, with her mother's gentle features and his determined chin. She stood at the counter, pouring cereal into a bowl. "How was work?" "Same as always, sweetheart." Ben tried to keep his voice casual as he started the coffee maker. "Just a quiet night at the museum." Lily's keen eyes studied his face. She'd gotten too good at reading him lately. "You look worried," she said, spooning up her breakfast. "Did something happen?" Ben forced a small smile. "Just tired, that's all. You know how these night shifts can be." Lily didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she gathered her schoolbooks from the table, the same ones he'd moved from his truck earlier. "Miss Rodriguez says I'm getting better at algebra. Want to see my last test?" "Of course I do." Ben welcomed the change of subject, even as his thoughts kept drifting to the woman sleeping in their guest room. "Show me after school? You'd better get moving if you want to catch the bus." Lily hugged him quickly, her backpack already slung over one shoulder. "There's leftover lasagna in the fridge if you're hungry." "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, sweetheart. Have a good day." Ben watched through the window as his daughter walked to the bus stop at the end of the street. Other kids were gathering there too, their voices carrying faintly on the morning air. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. Yet just down the hall, an FBI agent was hiding from her own people, and Ben had just dragged his daughter into whatever danger came with that decision. He poured his coffee and sank into a kitchen chair, his mind racing. What was he thinking? Bringing a stranger home? But then he remembered Vivian's frightened eyes at the museum, the way she'd fought to stay awake in his truck. His years as a Marine had taught him to read people, and everything about her spoke of genuine fear and exhaustion. Still, he needed to be smart about this. He'd give her today to rest. Then they'd need to figure out a plan. He couldn't risk Lily's safety, no matter how much his instincts told him Vivian needed help. Ben's coffee had gone cold by the time he finished thinking through all the angles. He stood up, his joints protesting after the long night shift. First, he needed sleep himself. Then he'd deal with whatever complications his act of kindness had brought to their quiet life. Sunlight filtered through the cream-colored curtains of the guest room, casting a gentle glow across Vivian's face. The sound of quiet footsteps made her instinctively tense, but when the door creaked open, it revealed a small figure holding a steaming mug with both hands. Lily padded into the room, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing jeans and a purple t-shirt with a unicorn on it. She moved carefully, trying not to spill the tea. "Dad says tea helps when you're tired," Lily announced matter-of-factly, placing the mug on the bedside table. "I made it myself. Well, Dad helped with the hot water part." Vivian sat up slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Her training told her to be cautious, but the girl's innocent smile made her heart soften. "That's very thoughtful of you. Thank you." "I'm Lily," she said, rocking back on her heels. "Dad didn't tell me your name yet." "I'm Vivian," she replied, carefully picking up the mug. The warmth spread through her hands, and the familiar scent of chamomile brought an unexpected comfort. "That's a pretty name," Lily said, settling herself on the edge of the bed. "Are you sick? Dad said you needed to rest." Before Vivian could answer, Ben appeared in the doorway. He wore fresh clothes, a plain blue shirt and jeans, but the tired lines around his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much. "Lily," he started, his voice gentle but firm. "I thought I asked you to let our guest rest, but I brought her tea." Lily protested, then turned back to Vivian with wide, hopeful eyes. "Are you going to stay with us?" "Because—" She hesitated, glancing at her father before continuing in a rush. "Are you my new mommy?" The question hung in the air like a delicate soap bubble. Ben's face flushed red, and he stepped forward quickly. "Lily, that's not— It's okay," Vivian interrupted softly, seeing the mixture of hope and vulnerability in Lily's expression. She set down her tea and reached for the girl's hand. "I'm just a stater, friend who needed some help. Your dad was very kind to let me stay here." Lily's shoulders slumped slightly, but she didn't let go of Vivian's hand. "Oh, well, you could still stay for dinner, right? Dad makes really good spaghetti." Ben cleared his throat. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. You need to eat something substantial." His voice carried a hint of concern that surprised Vivian. The afternoon passed quietly, with Vivian drifting in and out of sleep while Lily did her homework at the kitchen table. When evening came, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filled the small house. Vivian emerged from the guest room feeling more human after a shower and wearing borrowed clothes, a soft t-shirt and sweatpants that Ben had found in a box of his late wife's things. The kitchen was warm and bright. Lily sat at the table, carefully setting out plates, while Ben stirred a pot on the stove. The domesticity of the scene made Vivian's chest ache with a longing she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "The sauce needs more oregano," Lily declared, peering into the pot. Ben raised an eyebrow. "Oh, does it now? And when did you become such an expert on Italian cooking?" "Since forever," Lily said, with complete conviction, making Vivian laugh unexpectedly. The sound seemed to surprise all of them. Ben looked over his shoulder, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. It softened his usually stern features, making him look younger. Dinner was simple: spaghetti, garlic bread, and a small salad. But to Vivian, it was the best meal she'd had in months. Lily chatted about school, her chess club, and her art projects, filling the silence with comfortable chatter. Ben occasionally added comments or gentle corrections, and Vivian found herself drawn into their easy dynamic. When Lily described her latest art project, a detailed drawing of a dragon playing chess, Ben let out a genuine laugh that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Vivian joined in, and suddenly the weight of the past few days felt lighter. After dinner, while Lily was getting ready for bed, Ben pulled Vivian aside in the hallway. "We need to move you back to the museum tonight," he said quietly. "It's safer, and it won't raise suspicion if anyone's watching." Vivian nodded, pushing down the unexpected reluctance she felt. "You're right. I've already put you at too much risk." "Lily will ask questions," he warned. "Tell her I'm a friend from church who needed a place to rest," Vivian suggested. "It's simple enough for her to understand without raising concerns." Ben's expression softened. "Thank you for being kind to her today. He paused, searching for words. "She's had a hard time since her mother passed." "She's a remarkable girl," Vivian said softly. "You've done well with her." A moment of understanding passed between them, and Vivian saw something shift in Ben's eyes, a recognition of the person behind her professional facade, just as she had glimpsed the caring father behind his protective exterior. Later, when Lily came to say goodnight, she hugged Vivian impulsively. "Will you come back sometime?" she asked. "Lily," Ben warned gently. "What? She's nice, and you smiled more today than you have in forever," Lily said with the brutal honesty of children. Ben knelt down to her level. "Sweetheart, remember what we talked about? Miss Vivian is a friend from church who needed some rest. She has her own life to get back to." Lily nodded, though her disappointment was clear. "Okay, but if you need more rest sometime, you can come back," she told Vivian earnestly. Vivian felt tears prick at her eyes as she watched Ben guide his daughter to bed. The simple kindness of this family had touched something in her that years of undercover work had forced her to bury. But she knew she couldn't stay. Not with the danger that followed her, not with the mission still incomplete. As Ben prepared to drive her back to the museum, Vivian took one last look at the small, warm kitchen where they had shared dinner and laughter. For a few hours, she had experienced something she'd forgotten existed: the simple joy of belonging. The museum's basement corridors felt different at night. Ben's flashlight beam cut through the darkness as he led Vivian past rows of storage shelves and wrapped artifacts. Their footsteps echoed off the concrete floors, creating a hollow rhythm that matched the beating of their hearts. "This way," Ben whispered, though they were alone in the building. Old habits died hard. He stopped at a heavy wooden door, marked Archive Storage B7. The key scraped in the lock, and the door groaned open to reveal a spacious room lined with metal shelving units. "Nobody uses this room anymore," Ben explained, flicking on the lights. "Budget cuts moved most of the archives to digital storage last year. The cleaning crew doesn't even bother coming down here." Vivian surveyed the space with trained eyes. "Windows? None. Single entrance. Solid concrete walls." Ben gestured to a small bathroom in the corner. "Even has its own facilities. Previous curator used it as an office before retiring." A relieved smile crossed Vivian's face. "It's perfect." She set down her small bag, all she'd managed to grab before running. "Thank you, Ben. I mean it." Ben nodded, already moving some empty boxes to create a living space. Together, they arranged a makeshift bed using cushions from his office and spare blankets from the museum's educational programs. It wasn't much, but it was secure. "I've got the midnight to 8 shift," Ben said, checking his watch. We can talk then. Hours later, after his regular security rounds, Ben returned with 2 cups of coffee and some sandwiches from the vending machine. He found Vivian sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers and her laptop. It's not exactly 5-star room service, he said, handing her a cup. After the last few days, this is heaven. She took a grateful sip. I need to tell you what you're getting involved in, Ben. You deserve to know. Ben pulled up an old office chair and settled in. I'm listening. Vivian took a deep breath. For the past 18 months, I've been investigating a trafficking ring operating through the port. They're smart. They hide their operations behind legitimate shipping companies, charities, even tourism businesses. She ran a hand through her hair, frustration evident in her gesture. We were close, so close to bringing down the entire network. What happened? Someone tipped them off. The raid was supposed to catch them moving a large shipment, but they were ready for us. Her voice hardened. 3 agents were killed. The evidence disappeared. And suddenly, I'm being branded as the leak. Ben's jaw tightened. Inside job? Has to be. Someone high up enough to access operation details and corrupt the investigation. She pulled out a small USB drive from her pocket. This is everything I've gathered. Encrypted files, surveillance photos, financial records. But I can't access most of it without proper decryption, and I can't trust anyone at the Bureau right now. Ben leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. I might know someone. Guy from my old unit works in cybersecurity now. He's solid, wouldn't ask questions. Vivian's eyes lit up with hope. You'd do that? Already involved, aren't I? He gave a slight shrug. Besides, can't let the bad guys win. They spent the next few hours going through what files they could access. Vivian explained the patterns she'd noticed, the connections she'd made. Ben listened intently, occasionally offering insights from his own experience with port security during his Marine days. Around 3 a.m, Ben nearly knocked over his coffee when a security alert popped up on his monitor. Vivian instinctively reached for her weapon, but Ben's hand shot out to stop her. Just a raccoon in the loading dock, he said, showing her the camera feed. Been trying to catch that little burglar for weeks. Vivian relaxed, then chuckled. Nice reflexes there, Dad. Force of habit. You try raising a teenager alone without developing some ninja skills. The words came out before he could stop them, accompanied by something he hadn't felt in a long time, a genuine smile. Vivian noticed it too. First time I've seen you smile, she said softly. Ben's face grew serious again, but the warmth lingered in his eyes. Yeah, well, don't get used to it. Got a reputation to maintain. They returned to their work, but something had shifted in the atmosphere. The tension that had been present since their first meeting had eased slightly, replaced by a growing sense of trust and understanding. As they pored over shipping manifests and cargo records, Ben couldn't help but notice how Vivian's investigative skills matched her determination. She had a sharp mind for details, connecting dots that others might miss. It reminded him of his wife Sarah, who'd been a detective before the cancer took her. Different women, but the same fire for justice. Look at this, Vivian said, pointing to her screen. These container numbers keep showing up in different ports, but the cargo manifests don't match the weight distributions. Ben leaned in to look, their shoulders almost touching. False bottoms in the containers? That's what I'm thinking. Classic smuggling technique, but they're using legitimate businesses as cover. She rubbed her tired eyes. If we can prove the connection between these shipments and the shell companies funding them, we can expose the whole operation. Ben finished. Exactly, but first, we need to decrypt these files. She tapped the USB drive. Any chance your friend could look at these soon? Ben checked his watch. I'll call him when my shift ends. He's usually up early. He stood, stretching his stiff muscles. Should do another round. You good here? Vivian nodded. All ready. Turning back to her work. I'll keep digging. And Ben? He paused at the door. Thanks for not turning me away that first night. Thank me when this is over, he replied, but there was no gruffness in his tone this time. Just quiet determination and something else. The satisfaction of having a mission again, of doing what was right. As he walked the dark corridors of the museum, Ben reflected on how quickly life could change. A week ago, his biggest concern had been fixing Lily's bicycle chain. Now he was harboring an FBI agent and preparing to take on a criminal organization. But looking back at the archive room, where Vivian worked tirelessly to bring justice to victims she'd never met, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some fights were worth the risk. Ben balanced 2 paper bags in one arm as he unlocked the archive room door. The hinges creaked softly in the quiet basement. Vivian looked up from her laptop, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. "Brought you dinner?" he said, setting the bags on a cleared metal shelf. "And some clean clothes from the lost and found. They've been washed." "You're a lifesaver." Vivian stretched and closed her laptop. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see a change of clothes." She pulled out a simple navy sweater and dark jeans from the bag. "These will work perfectly." "Thank you, Ben." He nodded and started unpacking the food containers. "Nothing fancy, just some leftover lasagna Lily and I made." "You cook?" Vivian asked, genuinely surprised. "Had to learn." Ben's voice grew quiet. "After Sarah, after my wife passed, I couldn't keep feeding Lily takeout every night." Vivian set down the clothes and moved closer. "I'm so sorry, Ben. How long ago?" 3 years. He focused on arranging the containers, but his hands trembled slightly. "Drunk driver. She was coming home from the grocery store. Lily was at a friend's house that day, thank God." The room fell silent except for the hum of the old fluorescent lights. Above. Vivian touched his arm gently. That must have been incredibly hard. Ben looked at her hand on his arm, then met her eyes. "Some days are better than others." "Lily? She's what keeps me going." Vivian nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I lost someone too. My partner, Jack. 2 years ago during an operation, she walked to the small cot they'd set up and sat down. We'd been partners for 6 years. He was like a brother to me." Ben pulled up a folding chair and sat across from her. "What happened?" "Bad intel. We thought we were raiding a small-time dealer's warehouse." Vivian's voice grew tight. "Turned out to be connected to the same trafficking ring I'm investigating now. They were waiting for us. Jack." She swallowed hard. "He pushed me out of the way when they started shooting." Ben didn't offer empty words of comfort. Instead, he opened the container of lasagna and handed her a fork. "Eat while it's still warm." They shared the meal in comfortable silence, each lost in their memories. The simple act of eating together seemed to ease some of the weight they both carried. Ben's phone buzzed. He checked the message and smiled slightly. "Lily's stuck on her math homework. She usually calls me during my shift when she needs help. May I?" Vivian asked, surprising herself. "Math was always my strong subject." Ben hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He dialed Lily's number and put it on speaker. "Dad?" Lily's voice crackled through the phone. "I'm so confused about these fraction problems." "Hey, sweetheart, I've got a friend here who's really good at math. Would you like her help?" "Yes, please." The relief in Lily's voice was evident. "Hi, Lily. I'm Miss V," Vivian said warmly. "Tell me what's giving you trouble." For the next 20 minutes, Vivian patiently walked Lily through multiplying fractions. Her explanations were clear and encouraging, and Lily's excitement grew with each problem she solved. "That makes so much sense," Lily exclaimed. "Thank you, Miss V. Dad, can she help me with homework again sometime?" Ben watched Vivian's face light up at Lily's request. "We'll see, sweetheart. Time for bed now." "Okay. Good night, Dad. Good night, Miss V." After they hung up, Vivian noticed Ben studying her with an unreadable expression. "What? You're good with her," he said softly. "Natural. She's a smart kid." Vivian smiled. "You've done a wonderful job with her, Ben." He looked down at his hands. "I try. Sometimes I wonder if it's enough." "It is." Vivian's voice was firm. "Anyone can see how much she loves and trusts you." Ben stood and gathered the empty containers, his movements deliberate. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine a different reality, one where Vivian wasn't an FBI agent in hiding, where she could openly be part of their lives, helping Lily with homework at the kitchen table, sharing family dinners. He pushed the thought away. Their situation was temporary, born of necessity. Getting attached would only lead to more pain. "I should start my rounds," he said, heading for the door. "Try to get some rest." "Ben?" Vivian's voice stopped him. "Thank you for everything." He nodded once and closed the door behind him, leaving Vivian alone with her thoughts in the quiet archive room. As she prepared for bed, she couldn't help but think about Lily's innocent question from the other day. "Are you my new mommy?" The memory brought an unexpected ache to her chest. She lay down on the cot, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. The basement was cool and quiet, but for the first time since she'd gone into hiding, she felt truly warm, safe. The feeling both comforted and terrified her, because she knew it couldn't last. Above her, Ben's footsteps moved across the museum floor, steady and reassuring. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm lull her toward sleep, trying not to think about how quickly this temporary shelter had begun to feel like home. Ben sat beside Vivian in the dim archive room, their faces illuminated by the laptop's glow. Papers and notes were scattered across the desk, and empty coffee cups testified to their long hours of work. Vivian's fingers flew across the keyboard as she sorted through encrypted files. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of transactions on the screen. "These payments are too regular to be random. They're scheduled, like clockwork, on the 15th of every month." Ben leaned closer, squinting at the numbers. "Shell companies?" "Yes, but they're sloppy." Vivian's eyes lit up with determination. "See these routing numbers? They all lead back to the same bank in Charleston. Different accounts, but same branch." Ben grabbed a notepad and started writing. "That's our connection. If we can trace who's authorizing these payments, we can identify the buyers." Vivian finished his thought, her voice tight with anticipation. "And if we get the buyers, we can bring down the whole network." Ben felt a surge of purpose he hadn't experienced since his Marine days. They worked methodically, piecing together names and dates. Vivian's expertise in financial tracking paired perfectly with Ben's attention to detail. Hours passed as they built their case, the quiet basement becoming their war room. A distant boom shattered their concentration. Ben's head snapped up. That sounded like another explosion rocked the building. They rushed to the small basement window. Orange flames lit up the night sky, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In the parking lot, Ben's old truck was engulfed in fire, black smoke billowing into the darkness. "No, no, no!" Vivian stumbled backward, her face pale. "They found us! They found us!" Ben's mind raced to Lily, his daughter. His heart pounded against his ribs as he pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. Vivian paced the room, her professional demeanor cracking. "This is my fault. I never should have involved you. Your daughter." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry, Ben. I'm so sorry." "Stop." Ben's voice was firm but gentle. He reached for her shoulder, steadying her. "This isn't your fault, but we need to act fast." He scrolled through his contacts and found Mike Anderson, a fellow Marine he'd served with who now lived nearby. The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Mike, I need a favor. It's about Lily." Ben's voice was steady despite the chaos outside. "I need you to pick her up from school tomorrow. Take her to your place. Don't tell anyone where she is." There was a pause on the line. "This serious, brother? Dead serious. Like Fallujah serious. Say no more. I've got her. Sarah will look after her." "Thanks, Mike. I'll explain everything later." Ben ended the call and turned to find Vivian sitting at the desk, her head in her hands. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. It was the first time he'd seen her completely vulnerable, the tough FBI agent facade crumbling. He pulled up a chair next to her. "Hey, look at me." Vivian raised her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Everyone I get close to ends up in danger. My partner. Now you and Lily." "We're not your partner, and we're not dead." Ben's voice was firm. "We're in this together now, whether we like it or not. And I don't walk away from a fight when people need me. But your life, your daughter's life, was already changed the moment you walked through that door." Ben's expression softened. "And I don't regret helping you." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Red and blue lights began to flash through the basement window. Ben stood and helped Vivian to her feet. "We need to move. Grab the laptop and the files. We can't stay here anymore." As they quickly packed their evidence, Ben's mind was already forming a plan. He'd been trained for situations like this: assess, adapt, overcome. But this time, it wasn't just about completing a mission. It was about protecting the 2 people who had unexpectedly become the most important in his life. "I know some people," he said as they finished gathering their belongings. "Other veterans, good men who know how to stay quiet and fight smart. We're going to need help." Vivian wiped her eyes, her composure returning. "Ben, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." He met her gaze steadily. "These traffickers, they're not just your problem anymore. They made it personal when they brought this to my doorstep, when they threatened my daughter's safety." He checked his phone one more time, making sure Mike had sent confirmation about Lily. A text message showed a simple, "Copy that, she's safe." "We're going to finish what you started," Ben continued, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. We're going to take them down, all of them, but we're going to do it smart and we're going to do it together. Vivian stood straighter, drawing strength from his resolve. Outside, firefighters worked to extinguish the burning truck while police officers secured the scene. The flames cast an orange glow through the window, a reminder of how quickly their worlds had changed. Ben shouldered their bag of evidence and checked his weapon. I know a place we can go, someone I trust. But first, we need to get out of here without being seen. He led them to a maintenance tunnel he discovered during his security rounds. As they made their way through the darkness, Ben's decision solidified in his mind. There was no turning back now. He'd sworn an oath long ago to protect the innocent, and that oath didn't end when he left the Marines. The tunnel air was cool and damp, their footsteps echoing softly off the concrete walls. Behind them, the chaos of the fire and police response grew distant. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a fight that would test them both. But Ben had made his choice. He would see this through to the end, whatever the cost. The morning after the explosion, Ben pulled into his driveway in his neighbor Ted's borrowed pickup truck. His hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white. Vivian sat beside him, her face drawn with worry, while Lily bounced excitedly in the back seat. Is Miss Vivian really staying with us now, Dad? Lily asked for the third time. Ben nodded, catching his daughter's bright eyes in the rearview mirror. Yes, sweetheart, for a while. They carried Vivian's few belongings into the house, just a small duffel bag of clothes Ben had bought her, and the laptop containing their investigation files. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the modest bungalow, catching dust motes in its beams. I'll show you where everything is! Lily grabbed Vivian's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen. Dad always forgets where the measuring cups go, but I know exactly where they belong. Ben watched them, something warm and forgotten stirring in his chest. Vivian's professional mask softened as she let Lily lead her through a detailed tour of the kitchen cabinets. And this drawer has all the resin, spoons and forks, Lily explained. Dad says organization is important. Your dad's right about that. Vivian smiled, running her hand along the neat rows of silverware. Speaking of organization, how about I make us some breakfast? Real breakfast, not just cereal. Can you make pancakes? Lily's eyes lit up. With chocolate chips, if your dad approves. Ben leaned against the doorframe. I suppose we could make an exception today. While Vivian and Lily mixed batter and sprinkled chocolate chips, Ben sat at the kitchen table cleaning his service weapon. The familiar ritual helped calm his nerves. The explosion had changed everything. They needed a new plan. We should contact Jeremy, Vivian said later, after Lily had left for school. She stood at the sink, washing dishes, despite Ben's protests that she didn't need to help. Agent Voss. He's been my handler for 3 years, and if anyone in the bureau is still clean, it's him. Ben dried a plate, considering. You trust him? With my life. She handed him another dish. He's the one who first noticed something was wrong with the operation. He tried to warn me, but by then, it was too late. How do we reach him without tipping off anyone else? He has a private email account we use for emergencies. It's secure, encrypted. Vivian's hands stilled in the soapy water. I just hope he's still checking it. Throughout the day, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Vivian insisted on helping with household chores, saying it helped her feel useful while they waited for Agent Voss to respond. She dusted shelves, organized cupboards, and even found Ben's long-lost reading glasses behind the couch. When afternoon came, Vivian started dinner preparations. The kitchen filled with the smell of cooking onions and garlic as she made her grandmother's spaghetti sauce recipe from memory. This is nice, Lily said, sitting at the kitchen counter doing homework while Vivian stirred the sauce. Like having a real family. Again, Ben, who had been reviewing security camera footage from the museum on his laptop, looked up sharply. Vivian's spoon paused mid-stir. Lily, Ben started, but his daughter cut him off. I know she's not really staying forever, Lily said, not looking up from her math worksheet. But it's nice to pretend sometimes. Vivian turned back to the stove, but Ben caught the shine in her eyes before she did. He understood. In another life, this could have been their normal. Just a family making dinner, doing homework, sharing their day. That evening, after a meal that even Ben had to admit was better than his usual cooking, they gathered in the living room. Vivian checked her secure email account while Lily worked on a jigsaw puzzle on the coffee table. He responded, Vivian said suddenly, sitting up straight. Jeremy wants to meet tomorrow. There's a coffee shop downtown he says is safe. Ben moved to read over her shoulder. Could be a trap. No, this is definitely from him. included our old code phrase. Vivian pointed to a seemingly casual line about the weather. "He's clean, Ben. He can help us." "I'll borrow Ted's truck again," Ben said. "Less chance of being recognized." Lily looked up from her puzzle. "Can I come?" "No, sweetheart," Ben said firmly. "You'll go to school like normal. We can't change our routines too much. It might make people suspicious." Later, after Lily was in bed, Ben and Vivian sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea, planning the next day's meeting. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of crickets through the screened windows. "Thank you," Vivian said suddenly, "for all of this. Your home, your help, putting your family at risk." "We're already involved," Ben said. "Might as well see it through." Still, she wrapped her hands around her mug. "What you're doing. It means a lot." Ben watched her for a moment, remembering how she'd looked that first night in the rain, desperate, alone, afraid. Now she sat in his kitchen wearing borrowed sweatpants and one of his old Marine Corps t-shirts, her guard finally lowered. "Get some rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Vivian nodded and stood, then hesitated. "Ben, do you think this will ever be over? That we'll find a way to make things right?" Ben thought of the car explosion, of the danger surrounding them, of his daughter's hopeful face at dinner. "Yes," he said with quiet conviction. "We'll find a way." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, and headed to the guest room. Ben sat alone in the kitchen for a while longer, listening to the sounds of his home settling around him. Despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, something felt right about having Vivian here. Something felt complete. In the morning, they would meet Agent Voss and hopefully get closer to unraveling the corruption that had brought Vivian to his door. But for now, in this quiet moment, Ben allowed himself to imagine a future where nights like this, family dinners, homework help, shared smiles, weren't just pretend. The morning sun painted Charleston's sky in soft pinks and golds as Ben's borrowed truck wound its way toward the pier. Lily pressed her face against the back window, her breath fogging the glass. Vivian sat in the passenger seat, wearing one of Ben's old baseball caps pulled low over her eyes. "Look at all the boats!" Lily's voice bubbled with excitement. "Can we get closer to the water, Dad?" Ben checked his rearview mirror for the 100th time. No tail. His shoulders relaxed slightly. "Sure can, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about?" I know. We're just a regular family on a morning walk." Lily rolled her eyes, but her smile never dimmed. "Like we used to do with Mom." Ben caught Vivian's gentle glance. She reached back and squeezed Lily's knee. "Well, today I'm going to teach you my special shell hunting technique my grandmother showed me when I was your age." They parked in a quiet spot away from the main crowd. The salt air hit them as soon as they stepped out, carrying the cries of seagulls and the distant clang of boat bells. Ben grabbed his old camera, the perfect prop for their cover, but also something he hadn't used since Sarah passed. The wooden planks of the pier creaked under their feet as they walked. Lily skipped ahead, her ponytail bouncing, while Vivian pointed out different boats and made up silly stories about their names. Ben kept his guard up, but something warm spread through his chest watching them together. "Here's a good spot," Vivian said, leading them down to a stretch of beach beside the pier. She kicked off her borrowed sandals. "Okay, Lily, the trick is to walk in the wet sand right after a wave pulls back. That's when you'll find the best treasures." Lily copied Vivian's movements, carefully timing her steps with the waves. Ben raised his camera, capturing their silhouettes against the morning light. Through the viewfinder, they looked like any other mother and daughter sharing a perfect moment. Dad, look." Lily held up a perfect spiral shell, pearly pink on the inside. "Vivian says it's called a whelk." Click, another photo. This time of Lily's beaming face, her hand stretched toward the camera with her prize. "Beautiful find, sweetheart." Ben lowered the camera, watching as Vivian showed Lily how to listen to the ocean through the shell. They spent an hour combing the beach, their pockets growing heavy with shells and smooth stones. Ben took photos of weathered fishing boats, old pier posts, and, when they weren't looking, more shots of Vivian and Lily. In one, Vivian was mid-laugh as Lily splashed her feet in the surf. In another, they had their heads bent together, examining a piece of sea glass. For a moment, just a moment, Ben let himself forget about the danger. Forgot about the burning truck, the encrypted files, the people hunting. Them. Here, with the sun warming his face and his daughter's laughter carried on the breeze, hope flickered to life in his chest. Later that evening, after a simple dinner of spaghetti and meatballs, Vivian's specialty, it turned out, Ben tucked Lily into bed. She arranged her shells on her nightstand, the whelk taking center stage. Today was the best day, Lily whispered, her eyes already heavy with sleep. Can we be a real family someday, Dad? Ben's throat tightened. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep, princess. He found Vivian on the back porch, curled in one of the old wicker chairs. The evening air was thick with jasmine from the neighbor's vine. She'd let her hair down, and it caught the glow from the porch light. She asleep? Vivian asked as Ben settled into the chair beside her. Almost. She's still arranging those shells just right. Vivian smiled, but there was something sad in it. She's a special kid, Ben. The way she just accepts people. Loves so easily. Gets that from her mother. Ben's voice was soft. Sarah never met a stranger she couldn't turn into a friend. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the crickets and distant traffic. A car door slammed somewhere down the street, and they both tensed before relaxing again. I can't remember the last time I felt this peaceful, Vivian admitted. Staring out into the darkness. Even with everything happening, today was, I don't know, like stepping into another life for a few hours. I know what you mean. Ben shifted in his chair, and his hand brushed against hers on the armrest between them. The touch sent electricity through both of them. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, like startled birds, they both pulled away. Ben cleared his throat and gripped his armrest. Vivian tucked her hands into her lap. The cricket song seemed louder now, filling the space between them. Ben could feel his heart pounding, could sense Vivian's quiet breathing beside him. The moment stretched, fragile as a soap bubble, neither willing to break it. What they'd built today, this illusion of family, of normalcy, was too precious, too dangerous to acknowledge. Tomorrow, they'd have to return to reality, the investigation, the threats, the constant vigilance. But tonight, on this jasmine-scented porch, they let themselves exist in the space between what was and what could be. They stayed like that, side by side, but carefully apart, until the moon rose high above the trees and the night air grew cool enough to send them inside. Neither mentioned the moment their hands had touched or the way their hearts had reached for something they couldn't allow themselves to want. The burner phone buzzed on Ben's kitchen counter, its harsh vibration cutting through the peaceful afternoon quiet. Vivian snatched it up before the second ring, her fingers trembling slightly as she answered. "Jeremy?" she whispered, moving toward the window. Her shoulders tensed as she listened. Ben watched from the doorway, his arms crossed over his chest. After a week of waiting, Agent Voss had finally made contact. The late afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen windows, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. "Yes, I still have it," Vivian said into the phone, her voice low but steady. "The USB drive has everything. Dates, locations, bank accounts." She paused, listening. "No, it's not corrupted. I made sure." Ben moved closer, straining to hear the other side of the conversation. Vivian pressed the speaker button, holding the phone between them. "Can set up a sting." Voss's voice crackled through. "Use the buyer list to arrange a meet. Make them think it's a new client looking to expand operations. They're getting desperate after losing those shipments last month." "When?" Vivian asked, her eyes meeting Ben's. 3 days. I can have a tactical team in place by then." There was a pause. "But Vivian, you'll need to run point. You know their protocols, their verification process. They'll spot an undercover agent immediately." "I'll be there," she said firmly. Ben stepped forward. "So will I." "Who was that?" Voss's voice sharpened. "Ben Carver," he answered before Vivian could respond. "Former Marine Force Recon. I'm involved now, whether you like it or not." "Absolutely not," Voss said. "This is a federal operation." "He's right, Jeremy," Vivian cut in. "I need him there. He's got combat experience, and I trust him." Her words hung in the air between them, and Ben felt something warm settle in his chest. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Voss sighed. "Fine, but he follows my lead. Understood? I'll text coordinates for the planning meet tomorrow. Destroy this phone after." The line went dead. Vivian set the phone down and braced herself against the counter, letting out a shaky breath. "You okay?" Ben asked softly. She nodded. "It's just been a long time coming. These people, what they've done." She straightened up, squaring her shoulders. "We need to prepare." "Dad?" Lily's voice drifted in from the living room. can you help me set up the chessboard? Vivian promised to teach me. Ben and Vivian shared a look. Go, he said. I need to check some things in the garage anyway. While Lily's excited chatter and Vivian's patient instructions filled the house, Ben pulled down the attic stairs in the garage. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight as he crawled toward a familiar olive-green trunk tucked in the corner. He hadn't opened it since moving to Charleston. The clasps were stiff with age, but they gave way with a sharp click. Inside, wrapped in old t-shirts, lay the gear he'd hoped to never need again. His tactical vest, holster, combat boots, still caked with desert sand. At the bottom, carefully wrapped, was his Ka-Bar knife, the blade still sharp after all these years. Through the garage window, he could hear Vivian's voice. That's it, Lily. The knight moves in an L shape. 2 squares forward, 1 square to the side. Like this? Perfect. Now, what's important to remember about chess is that every move matters. You have to think ahead, see the whole board. Ben ran his fingers over the vest's rough material. The weight of it felt familiar, like greeting an old friend, or maybe welcoming back a ghost. Dad, Lily called. Come watch me beat Vivian. In your dreams, kiddo. Vivian laughed, the sound warming the whole house. Ben carefully repacked his gear, but left the trunk open. Tomorrow, he'd need to clean and check everything. For now, though, he headed back inside where Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, her face scrunched in concentration as she studied the chessboard. Vivian looked up as he entered, her eyes asking a silent question. He nodded slightly. He was ready. She turned back to the game, but her hand trembled slightly as she moved her bishop. The key to chess, she told Lily, is protecting what matters most. See how all these other pieces guard the king and queen? That's their job, keeping the important things safe. Lily nodded seriously, moving her pawn with careful deliberation. Like how you and Dad protect me? Ben saw Vivian's breath catch, her eyes growing bright. Yeah, she said softly. Exactly like that. They played until the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the chessboard. Ben watched them, these two pieces of his world that had somehow come together, and felt the weight of tomorrow pressing down. In the garage, his gear waited. In his pocket, the burner phone held coordinates to a meeting that would change everything. But for now, in this moment, there was just the quiet click of chess pieces, Lily's triumphant grin when she captured a pawn, and Vivian's gentle coaching. For now, they were just a family on a Sunday evening, playing chess as the day faded into dusk. Checkmate, Lily announced proudly. Vivian feigned shock. Already? You're a natural. She reached out to ruffle Lily's hair, the gesture so natural it made Ben's heart ache. One more game? Lily pleaded. Please? Set it up, Vivian said with a smile, but her eyes met Ben's again. They both knew tomorrow would come too soon, bringing with it all the danger they'd been holding at bay. But tonight, they had this. The soft lamplight, the familiar comfort of home, and the quiet sound of chess pieces being arranged for one more game. The kitchen filled with warmth from the oven as Lily measured chocolate chips with careful precision. Her tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, making sure not a single chip went to waste. The familiar scent of home-baked cookies wrapped around them like a soft blanket on this ordinary Tuesday evening that felt anything but ordinary. Dad, remember that time you tried to make cookies and they turned into rocks? Lily giggled, pouring the chips into the mixing bowl where Vivian was stirring the dough. Ben looked up from where he was cleaning dishes at the sink. Those weren't rocks, they were tactical survival biscuits. Is that what we're calling burnt cookies now? Vivian teased, her eyes twinkling. She showed Lily how to fold the chocolate chips into the dough with gentle strokes. The secret is not to overmix. Just fold until everything comes together. The kitchen radio played soft music in the background as they worked together. Lily had insisted on making cookies after dinner, and neither adult could deny her enthusiasm. Their earlier meal of spaghetti and meatballs, Ben's specialty, had been filled with stories and laughter. Tell me again about the time Dad got lost on his own camping trip, Lily requested, reaching for a spoon to taste the cookie dough. Hey now, Ben protested, but he was smiling. I wasn't lost. I was. Exploring alternative routes. For 6 hours? Vivian raised an eyebrow, having heard the story during dinner. In circles? Lily burst into giggles again, and Ben couldn't help but join in. The sound of their shared laughter bounced off the kitchen walls, making the small space feel full and alive. They worked together to scoop the dough onto baking sheets. Lily insisted on making the cookies extra large, so they'll last longer, she explained seriously. Ben showed her how to space them properly, his large hands gentle as he guided hers. "Now we wait," Vivian announced, sliding the trays into the oven. She set the timer and turned to find Lily offering her the mixing bowl and spoon. "It's tradition," Lily explained solemnly. "We always lick the bowl. Dad says it builds character." "Does he now?" Vivian accepted the spoon with mock seriousness. "Well, we can't argue with tradition." They settled around the kitchen table, sharing the remaining cookie dough and trading more stories. Ben told them about his first attempt at cooking for his Marine unit, which ended with a pot of what he called mystery stew that no one would touch. Lily shared her latest art project from school, a detailed drawing of their backyard garden that showed real talent. When the timer dinged, they all gathered around the oven. The cookies came out golden brown and perfect, filling the kitchen with an irresistible aroma. They waited impatiently for them to cool, Lily bouncing on her toes with excitement. "These are the best cookies ever," Lily declared after her first bite, chocolate smeared at the corner of her mouth. She looked at Vivian with shining eyes. "Can we make them again tomorrow?" The innocent question hung in the air for a moment. Vivian's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "We'll make them again soon, sweetheart, I promise." After they'd enjoyed several cookies each, Ben noticed the time. "Okay, kiddo, time to get ready for bed." "But Dad," Lily started to protest. "No buts. School tomorrow, remember?" He ruffled her hair affectionately. "Go on up. We'll be there in a minute to say goodnight." Lily hugged them both, holding on to Vivian a day again, little longer than usual, before heading upstairs. The sound of her footsteps faded, leaving Ben and Vivian alone in the kitchen. Vivian turned to the sink, starting to wash the mixing bowls and baking sheets. Her hands moved mechanically, scrubbing perhaps a little harder than necessary. Ben gathered the remaining cookies onto a plate, wrapping them carefully in foil. The quiet wrapped around them, broken only by the sound of running water and the soft clink of dishes. Ben was about to speak when he heard a small sound, almost like a hiccup. He turned to find Vivian's shoulders shaking slightly, her head bowed over the sink. "Vivian?" He moved closer, touching her shoulder gently. She turned, and he saw the tears streaming down her face. She tried to wipe them away with wet hands, leaving soap suds on her cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I can't." Ben reached past her to turn off the water. Her hands were red from the hot water, and they trembled as she gripped the work amendment edge of the sink. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not of tomorrow, not really. I'm scared of losing this." She gestured helplessly at the kitchen around them, the cookies cooling on the counter, Lily's drawings on the fridge, the warm light making everything glow softly. "I never thought I'd have anything like this. I never let myself want it, and now." Ben stepped closer, taking her hand in his. His palm was warm and calloused, steady against her trembling fingers. "We protect our own," he said firmly, his voice low and certain. "That's what we do. That's what we'll keep doing." Vivian looked up at him, her eyes still bright with tears, but now holding something else, hope perhaps, or understanding. Ben pulled her closer, and she didn't resist. She let herself lean into him, her head resting against his chest as his arms wrapped around her. They stood like that in the quiet kitchen, holding each other while the clock ticked softly on the wall and the scent of fresh cookies lingered in the air. Through the window, crickets chirped in the garden, and somewhere upstairs, Lily was humming as she got ready for bed. Ben's heartbeat was steady under Vivian's ear, a strong, constant rhythm that seemed to say what his words had promised. "We protect our own. We protect our own. We protect our own." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Ben's driveway as he loaded Lily's overnight bag into Mrs. Peterson's minivan. His neighbor of 8 years smiled warmly, her gray hair neatly pinned back as always. "We're so happy to have Lily for the church sleepover," Mrs. Peterson said. "The girls are going to have such fun making friendship bracelets." Lily bounced on her toes, excited about spending time with her friend Jenny. "Dad, I packed my special beads." Her enthusiasm made Ben's heart ache. If she only knew the real reason for tonight's arrangement. "Be good, sweetheart." Ben hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you. Love you too, Dad." Lily waved from the window as the minivan pulled away. Ben watched until they turned the corner, then headed back inside where Vivian was double-checking her tactical gear. Her face was set with determination, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her bulletproof vest. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. "As I'll ever be." The drive to the warehouse district took 20 minutes. They parked Ben's borrowed truck a block away, walking the rest in silence. The abandoned building loomed ahead, its broken windows like dark eyes watching their approach. Agent Voss waited by a side door, his familiar face lined with worry. "Cameras are set," he whispered, ushering them inside. "We've got eyes on every entrance and the main floor." The warehouse interior was vast and empty, save for scattered wooden pallets and rusty machinery. Their footsteps echoed despite their attempts at stealth. Voss led them to a makeshift control center, hidden behind stacked crates. "The buyers think they're meeting a new supplier," Voss explained, checking the camera feeds on his laptop. "Once we have confirmation of their intentions on video, we move in." Ben positioned himself near a support column, his hand resting on his concealed weapon. Years of military training kicked in as he scanned entry points and calculated angles of cover. Vivian crouched beside Voss, her eyes fixed on the screens. Minutes stretched like hours in the dusty silence. Then came the sound of vehicles outside. "3 SUVs approaching," Voss muttered. Right on schedule. Through the cameras, they watched men in expensive suits exit the vehicles. 6 of them. Too many, Ben thought. His instincts screamed danger. The men entered through the main door, their footsteps sharp against concrete. Ben's pulse quickened as they came into view. Something about their formation seemed wrong. Too practiced, too tactical. "Welcome," one man called out, his voice echoing. "We're here to discuss business." Voss stepped forward, playing his role as the connection. "Glad you could make it. My associates are eager to—" "Agent Cross," another man interrupted smoothly. "Why don't you come out and join us?" Ben's blood ran cold. Vivian froze beside him. In the next heartbeat, everything exploded into chaos. Guns appeared from beneath suit jackets. Voss shouted, "Down!" as he drew his weapon, but a shot rang out before he could fire. He crumpled, red blooming across his chest. "Cover!" Ben roared, grabbing Vivian and yanking her behind the column as bullets sparked off metal and concrete around them. He returned fire, dropping one attacker while Vivian shot another in the leg. "Jeremy!" Vivian tried to reach the fallen agent, but Ben held her back as more rounds peppered their position. "We have to move!" Ben pulled her toward the rear exit, providing covering fire. His left arm erupted in pain as a bullet grazed him, but adrenaline kept him moving. They were almost to the door when Vivian stumbled. 2 men emerged from the shadows behind them. Before Ben could turn, something hard struck the back of his head. He fell, vision blurring. Through the haze, he saw Vivian struggling as they grabbed her. "Ben!" she screamed. He fought to stand, to reach her, but his limbs wouldn't respond. More gunfire forced him to roll behind a pile of debris. When his vision cleared seconds later, Vivian was gone. The sound of squealing tires outside told him they'd taken her. Ben staggered to his feet, his head throbbing and arm bleeding. He made it to Voss, but the agent's vacant eyes told him it was too late. Distant sirens wailed. Someone had reported the gunfire. Clutching his wounded arm, Ben forced himself to move. He couldn't be found here. Lily needed him. And now, Vivian needed him too. He disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving behind the echoes of gunfire and the weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. But as he moved through the shadows, his military training took over, pushing aside pain and fear. He would find her. Whatever it took, he would bring her home. The night swallowed him as he made his way back to the truck, already forming plans. He had contacts, other veterans who owed him favors. It was time to call in the old guard. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Ben's truck rumbled to a stop in the driveway, the engine's familiar sputter doing nothing to calm his racing heart. Every movement sent sharp stabs of pain through his injured shoulder, but the physical hurt was nothing compared to the crushing weight in his chest. He sat there for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The porch light clicked on automatically as dust settled over their small bungalow. Through the kitchen window, he could see Lily's silhouette at the dining table, probably working on one of her drawings. The sight of her there, safe and unaware, made his eyes burn with unshed tears. Ben forced himself to take deep breaths, just like he'd learned in the Marines. In through the nose, out through the mouth. He had to keep it together. For Lily. Always for Lily. The walk to the front door felt like miles. His keys scraped against the lock, and he pushed inside. The house smelled like the chocolate chip cookies they'd baked together last night, all three of them laughing and making a mess of the kitchen. Was that really just yesterday? "Daddy," Lily's voice rang out from the kitchen. "You're back early." Mrs. Peterson said the church sleepover got canceled because of the rain, but that's okay because I wanted to show Miss Vivian my new drawing anyway. Ben's throat closed up. He rounded the corner to find Lily at the table, colored pencils scattered around her, working on what looked like a family portrait. Three figures stood holding hands, one tall with gray hair, one medium with long dark hair, and one small with pigtails. "Where's Miss Sound?" "Vivian?" Lily asked, looking up with those big brown eyes that could see right through him. "I made this for her." The question hit him like a physical blow. Ben's legs gave out, and he sank into the nearest kitchen chair. The events of the afternoon played through his mind in vivid flashes. The warehouse, the gunshots, Vivian's terrified face as they dragged her away, while he could do nothing but watch, trapped behind cover with a bullet in his shoulder. "Daddy?" Lily's voice wavered. "What's wrong?" "You're crying." Ben reached up to touch his face, surprised to find his cheeks wet. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried in front of his daughter. Not since Sarah's funeral, probably. "Come here, sweetheart," he managed to say, opening his arms. Lily came around the table and climbed into his lap, careful of his injured shoulder, even though she didn't know about it. She always seemed to sense when he was hurting, just like her mother. "Something bad happened today," Ben said, softly, holding his daughter close. "Miss Vivian, she's in trouble. Some bad people took her away." "Like when Mommy went away?" Lily's small voice cracked. "No, baby," Ben stroked her hair. "Not like that. Miss Vivian is still alive, but she needs our help. I promise you, I'm going to find her and bring her home." Lily was quiet for a long moment, processing this in that careful way she had. Then she slid off his lap and went to the kitchen counter. She pulled out the cookie jar, the one they'd filled just yesterday, and took out 2 chocolate chip cookies. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Ben asked, watching as she dragged a chair over to the window above the sink. "When I was little and scared of thunderstorms," Lily explained, climbing up onto the chair, "Mommy used to say that if we left cookies on the windowsill, the storm would know we were being brave and would go away faster." She carefully placed the cookies on the inner ledge of the window. "Maybe if we leave cookies here, Miss Vivian will know we're being brave for her, and she'll find her way back to us." The simple faith in her voice broke something open inside Ben's chest. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking as silent sobs racked his body. All the fear, guilt, and helpless rage he'd been holding back came pouring out. He felt small arms wrap around his neck and Lily's warm presence pressed against him. "It's okay, Daddy," she whispered. "We can be scared together." When Ben finally got himself under control, he looked up to find Lily watching him with eyes far too wise for her 12 years. She reached out and wiped his cheeks with her sleeve, just like he used to do for her when she was smaller. "I miss her too," Lily said simply. Ben pulled his daughter close again, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." "Are you going to help her, like you used to help people in the Marines?" Ben nodded against her hair. "Yes. I'm going to find her and bring her home. Promise? I promise." The words came out fierce and certain. Ben looked past Lily to the cookies sitting on the windowsill, barely visible now in the growing darkness outside. His jaw set with determination as he made a silent vow, not just to Lily, but to Vivian, to himself, to whatever power might be listening. He would bring her home, no matter what it took. Lily yawned against his shoulder, the emotional toll of the evening catching up with her. "Can I sleep in your room tonight, Daddy?" "Of course you can, sweetheart." Ben pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Why don't you go get ready for bed? I'll be there in a few minutes." After Lily padded off to brush her teeth, Ben stood at the kitchen window, staring at the 2 cookies his daughter had left as a beacon of hope. The sight of them there, such a small thing born of a child's unwavering faith, strengthened his resolve. He touched the window glass gently, his reflection ghostly in the darkness beyond. "Hold on, Vivian," he whispered. "We're coming for you." 3 days passed like a thick fog, each hour bleeding into the next. Ben moved through his routine like a ghost, getting Lily ready for school, making meals neither of them really ate, staring at the untouched plate he still set at Vivian's spot each night. The cookies Lily had left on the windowsill grew stale, but he couldn't bring himself to throw them away. That morning, after dropping Lily at school, Ben trudged to his mailbox like he did every day. His shoulder still ached from the gunshot graze, a constant reminder of that night at the warehouse. When he pulled open the rusty door, a plain white envelope sat among the usual bills and junk mail. No return address, no markings, just his name in neat block letters. Ben's hands trembled slightly as he tore it open right there on the sidewalk. A small burner phone clattered onto the pavement, along with the USB drive. His heart stopped, then started. Racing. Back inside the house, Ben locked the doors and pulled the curtains. He powered on the phone with shaking fingers. One voice message. He pressed play and nearly dropped the device when he heard her voice. Ben. Vivian's whisper was hoarse but steady. I'm alive. I can't say where I am, but I'm okay. They're keeping me isolated, but they don't know everything I have. She paused, and Ben could hear the careful control in her voice. The USB drive has account records. Senator Howard Kincaid's private slush fund. He's been bankrolling the whole operation. The numbers are there, the connections, everything we need. But I can't. Her voice cracked slightly. I can't do anything with it from here. Ben sank into his kitchen chair, the same one where she'd sat helping Lily with homework just days ago. Her coffee mug still sat in the dish rack where she'd left it. Ben, I know I have no right to ask more of you. You've already risked everything, but you're my only hope left. Don't. Let this end here. Don't let them win. There was a long pause, filled only with her breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Tell Lily. Tell her I'm sorry I missed chess club. And Ben. Another pause. Thank you for showing me what having a real home feels like. The message ended. Ben sat motionless, the phone pressed to his ear long after her voice faded. Through the window, he could see the neighbor kids playing in their yard, their laughter drifting in, a jarring reminder that the world was still turning while his had stopped 3 days ago. He pulled out his own phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. Martinez Auto Shop. Rico, Ben said quietly. It's Carver. I need the old guard. A beat of silence. Jesus, Carver. Haven't heard that tone since Fallujah. How bad? Bad enough to call. Give me 3 hours. The usual spot. Ben hung up and went to his garage. Behind some boxes, he pulled out an old Foot Locker he'd hoped never to open again. Inside lay his marine gear, tactical vest, .com equipment, the tools of a life he'd left behind. As he checked each piece, muscle memory took over. His hands remembered every strap, every pocket. The burner phone buzzed again. Another message from Vivian. One more thing. There's a weekly deposit into an offshore account every Friday at midnight. That's when they move Plash merchandise. The next one is in 2 days. Whatever you're planning, that's your window. Ben's jaw tightened. 2 days. He needed to get Lily somewhere safe, coordinate with his old team, and figure out how to use these account records to bring down a United States senator, all while staying ahead of corrupt FBI agents who wanted them dead. He pulled out the chess set Vivian had given Lily, running his fingers over the wooden pieces. The queen was missing. Lily had been carrying it in her pocket since that night, refusing to put it back until Miss Vivian can play again. The doorbell rang, making him jump. Through the peephole, he saw his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chin, holding a casserole dish. "Third day in a row you forgot to pick up your mail until noon," she said when he opened the door. "I may be old, but I notice things. That nice lady who was staying with you, the one who made Lily smile again, she's in trouble, isn't she?" Ben started to give the rehearsed story about a church friend moving away, but Mrs. Chin held up her hand. "Don't insult us both, Benjamin. I was in the resistance in Vietnam before I came here. I know that look in your eyes." She pressed the casserole into his hands. "Lily can stay with me as long as you need. No questions asked." Ben's throat tightened. "Thank you." He managed. She patted his arm. "Just bring that lady home. Lily needs a mother's love, and anyone can see that woman has it to give." After Mrs. Chen left, Ben went to his bedroom and pulled out the photo album he kept in his nightstand. The last picture of Sarah, taken just days before the crash, showed her playing with a toddler Lily in their backyard. He touched the photo gently. "I think you'd like her, honey," he whispered. "She makes Lily laugh the same way you did." The burner phone felt heavy in his pocket, a lifeline to Vivian, proof she was still fighting. He thought of her voice breaking when she talked about having a real home, how she'd folded so naturally into their lives, as if she'd always been meant to be there. In 3 hours, he'd meet his old team. They'd plan, prepare, and set in motion whatever it took to bring Vivian home and expose the truth. But right now, he allowed himself one moment of vulnerability in his empty kitchen, where the ghost of her laughter still echoed and cookies waited on the windowsill for a return he'd now make sure would happen. He pulled out the burner phone one last time and typed a simple message. "Hold on, we're coming." Then he began to pack. Ben sat in his garage, staring at his phone. The burner device Vivian had sent him felt heavy in his other hand. His thumb hovered over the contact list, names he hadn't called in years, men who'd shared foxholes and mess halls with him decades ago. Good men, reliable men, the kind who showed up when it mattered. He pressed dial on the first number. "Mike, it's Ben Carver." "Yeah, been a long time." "Listen, I need your help. Can you come by the house? Bring your laptop." He made 4 more calls just like it. Within 2 hours, his garage transformed from a lonely space of tools and memories into a reunion of sorts. Mike Reynolds, now a cybersecurity consultant, sat on an overturned milk crate, his laptop balanced on his knees. Tom Wilson, who'd turned his drone piloting skills into a successful wedding photography business, leaned against Ben's workbench. Dave Martinez and Chris Cooper, both former reconnaissance specialists, stood with arms crossed, while Jack Murphy, their old communications expert, settled into a folding chair. Empty beer bottles collected on the workbench as Ben laid out everything, meeting Vivian at the museum, the car bomb, the failed sting, and finally, the corrupt senator behind it all. The garage fell silent except for the gentle hum of Mike's laptop fan. "So, Ben finished," his voice rough. "That's where we are." "I know it's a lot to ask." "Stop right there," Dave interrupted, setting down his beer. "You had me at I need help." The others nodded in agreement. Mike looked up from his screen, his glasses reflecting blue light. "This Senator, Howard Kincaid, he's scheduled for a town hall meeting next week. Local access TV will be there, plus streaming coverage. Perfect setup for maximum exposure," Tom added, already pulling out his phone to check equipment specs. Jack leaned forward, his chair creaking. "If we're going to do this, we need to be smart. These guys already knew about the FBI sting. They've got inside help." "That's why we keep this between us," Ben said, firmly. "No outside contact, no phones except burners, no paper trail." Chris, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "I've still got some surveillance gear from my private security days, cameras small enough to hide in a button. We could plant them around the venue beforehand." The planning began in earnest. Mike's fingers flew across his keyboard, mapping out the town hall's security system. Tom sketched rough diagrams of camera angles and blind spots. Dave and Chris worked out entry and exit points, while Jack listed the equipment they'd need. "We'll need eyes in the sky," Tom said, pulling up specs for his smallest drone. "I can modify it for night operations. Keep it quiet." Ben watched these men, older now, with gray hair and laugh lines, slip back into their old roles like putting on comfortable shoes. They moved with purpose, their civilian lives falling away to reveal the sharp edges of their training. "The key is the timing," Mike said, turning his laptop around. "Look here, the town hall is being held at the community center. Their network security is basic at best. I can hijack the video feed, but we'll need something concrete to broadcast. Something that can't be denied. Vivian's USB drive," Ben remembered. "It has account numbers, transactions linking directly to Kincaid." Dave nodded slowly. "So we get the evidence up on every screen in the place, right when he's in the middle of his speech. Maximum exposure, maximum embarrassment, and maximum risk," Jack added. "These people tried to kill you once already, Ben." "I know," Ben's voice was steady. "That's why I called you all. I can't do this alone, and I won't risk calling in any officials, not when we don't know how far this goes." The men exchanged glances, the same looks they'd shared before missions years ago. Understanding passed between them without words. "Well," Chris said, standing up straighter, "looks like the old guards got one more operation. They worked late into the night, planning every detail. Mike would handle the technical infiltration, ensuring their evidence would broadcast at the right moment. Tom's drone would provide overhead surveillance and a quick escape route if needed. Dave and Chris would handle crowd control and building security, while Jack coordinated their communications. Beer bottles emptied as they refined the plan. The familiar rhythm of mission planning filled the garage. The same careful attention to detail, the same consideration of contingencies, the same trust in each other's abilities. One week, Ben said finally, looking at the plans spread across his workbench. "We do this in 1 week." "Just like old times," Dave smiled, but his eyes were serious. "Except this time, we're not just following orders, we're doing what's right." Tom raised his beer. "To doing what's right. And to bringing her home," Ben added quietly. They all raised their bottles, in the dim light of the garage, surrounded by the ghosts of their younger selves and the weight of what lay ahead. The old guard made their pledge. Not to country this time, but to justice, to friendship, to making things right. As they began packing up their planning materials, Mike paused at his laptop. "Ben, you know this could go sideways fast." "I know. Just making sure." Mike nodded, closing his computer. "Because whatever happens, we're with you." Ben looked at these men, his brothers in all but blood, and felt a familiar warmth in his chest. The same feeling he'd had in those distant days when they'd relied on each other for survival. Now they were older, slower perhaps, but no less determined, no less loyal. They filed out one by one, each with their assigned tasks, each carrying a piece of the plan. Ben stood in his garage doorway, watching their taillights disappear into the night. Inside, he could hear Lily's small television playing upstairs, some cartoon she loved. He thought of Vivian, wherever she was, holding on, waiting. 1 week, he whispered to himself. "Hold on, Vivian, we're coming." The garage light cast long shadows across maps and laptops spread over Ben's workbench. Mike Torres, his old communications specialist, typed furiously while explaining their progress. "We've got backdoor access to his private server," Mike said, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "But man, this guy's got more security than Fort Knox." Ben nodded, checking his watch. It was already past midnight. He'd need to be up in 5 hours to get Lily ready for school. The thought of his daughter made his chest tighten. She'd been so brave through all of this. "How's the surveillance feed looking, Danny?" Ben asked, turning to a stocky man studying drone footage on a tablet. Danny Reeves adjusted his glasses, got clean angles on all the building's exits. If anyone so much as sneezes near that town hall, we'll know about it. The familiar military precision of his old unit brought comfort to Ben. These men had dropped everything to help him. Danny had taken emergency leave from his IT job. Mike had driven 6 hours from Atlanta, and the others had rearranged their lives without hesitation. "Check this out," Mike called out suddenly. "Found something interesting in the money trail. Large payments to offshore accounts, all routed through shell companies." Ben leaned over Mike's shoulder, studying the screen. The numbers were staggering, millions of dollars moving through dozens of accounts. "Can you trace where it ends up?" "Working on it, but this is definitely not campaign finance money." The next morning, Ben stood in his driveway, holding Lily's bicycle seat as she wobbled forward. The sun was barely up, but he wanted to make these moments count. "That's it, sweetheart. Keep pedaling," he encouraged, slowly letting go. Lily's face was scrunched in concentration as she moved forward on her own. "Daddy, I'm doing it," she squealed, making it several feet before tipping sideways. Ben caught her before she fell. "You sure are, princess." He helped her up, brushing off her knees. "Want to try again?" Lily nodded eagerly, but then her expression turned serious. "Is Miss Vivian okay?" The question caught Ben off guard. He knelt down to her level, choosing his words carefully. "We're working very hard to help her. Like when you were a Marine?" Lily asked, showing wisdom beyond her years. "Just like that," Ben replied, his throat tight. "Now, let's see if you can make it to the end of the driveway this time." That evening, after tucking Lily into bed with an extra long story time, Ben returned to the garage. The team had made progress. They'd identified key players in the trafficking operation and mapped out escape routes from the town hall. "Security detail changes every 6 hours," reported Jack Martinez, examining building blueprints. "But there's a blind spot here." He pointed to a service entrance. Ben rubbed his tired eyes. "What about the media angle? Got 3 independent news crews on." "Stand by," said Pete Wilson, their logistics expert. "Plus, we've copied all the evidence to multiple secure locations. Once this breaks, there's no putting it back in the box." They worked through the night, fine-tuning every detail. Ben's mind kept drifting to Vivian, where she was, if she was safe. The memory of her laughing with Lily over chess pieces made his heart ache. The next day brought more bicycle practice. Lily was getting better, managing longer stretches without help. "Daddy," she said during a water break, "you look tired." Ben smiled weakly. "Just working hard, sweetie. To save Miss." Vivian? When Ben didn't answer immediately, she added, I know you will. You're the bravest daddy ever. That night, the team ran through their final preparations. Mike had cracked another layer of encrypted files, revealing dates and locations of past trafficking operations. The evidence was damning. Timeline set, Danny announced. Town hall meeting is in 3 days. We'll need to move fast once we're in position. Ben studied the tactical map they'd created, marking entry points and camera positions. Everything had to be perfect. They couldn't afford any mistakes, not with Vivian's life on the line. Run it again, he ordered, and his team fell into the familiar rhythm of mission preparation. Hours later, Ben stood alone in his kitchen, making Lily's lunch for the next day. The house felt empty without Vivian's presence. He missed the sound of her voice, the way she'd help Lily with homework, the quiet conversations they'd share after his daughter went to bed. I know you'll save her, Daddy. Ben turned to find Lily standing in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant. You should be asleep, Princess. I heard you in the garage again. She patted over and hugged his waist. Miss, Vivian told me Marines never leave anyone behind. Ben lifted her up, holding her close. That's right, we don't. She makes you smile more, Lily said simply. And she makes the best chocolate chip cookies. She does, doesn't she? Ben's voice was rough with emotion. When you bring her home, can we have cookie night again? Ben kissed her forehead. First thing we'll do. Now, back to bed, young lady. After tucking Lily in again, Ben returned to the garage. His team was still there, determination written on their tired faces. They'd been Marines together, brothers in arms. Now they were something more, guardians of hope, protectors of a family not yet whole. Mike looked up from his computer. We've got everything we need, Ben. We're ready. Ben nodded, studying the faces of men he'd trusted with his life. They were no longer in uniform, but their commitment hadn't changed. They were still the old guard, standing ready when called. 3 days, Ben said quietly. 3 days, and we bring her home. Danny raised his coffee mug in a silent toast. The others followed suit. In the quiet of the garage, surrounded by plans and equipment, Ben felt the weight of their loyalty, their determination, for Vivian, for Lily, for the family they'd all helped protect. The sound of crickets filtered through the garage door, a peaceful counterpoint to their intensive planning. Somewhere out there, Vivian was waiting, holding on to hope. Ben touched the burner phone in his pocket, her last lifeline to them. 3 days. They'd be ready. The Charleston Civic Center hummed with anticipation. Hundreds of people filled the rows of seats, their murmurs echoing off the high ceiling. Campaign posters lined the walls, showing Senator Howard Kincaid's practiced smile beneath the slogan, Traditional Values, Stronger Future. Ben sat in the middle section, wearing a dark suit that felt stiff and foreign compared to his usual work clothes. He touched the earpiece hidden beneath his collar. Check positions. East entrance secured, came Torres's quiet response. West side clear, another voice confirmed. Drones in. Position, added Jackson, monitoring from a van across the street. Tech ready, whispered Roberts. From the control room, he'd accessed using a forged maintenance badge. The lights dimmed, and polite applause filled the hall as Senator Kincaid strode onto the stage. His silver hair caught the spotlight, and his $1,000 suit gleamed as he approached the podium. My fellow citizens of Charleston, Kincaid began, his voice carrying that practiced warmth that had won him 5 terms. We gather here today to discuss the backbone of our society, our families. Ben's jaw tightened. He glanced at the news crews positioned along the walls, their cameras rolling. Channel 4, Channel 7, even a crew from CNN. Perfect. Our children are our future, Kincaid continued, gripping the podium. And as your senator, I have always fought to protect now. Ben commanded softly. The main projector screen behind Kincaid flickered. The senator's campaign logo dissolved, replaced by security. Camera footage. The timestamp showed last Tuesday. A warehouse. Men in suits. Money changing hands. Kincaid faltered mid-sentence as confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. The footage switched to financial documents, account numbers, offshore transfers, all highlighted in red, all bearing Kincaid's signature. What is this? Kincaid demanded, turning to his staff. Cut the feed! But more images appeared. Young women being forced into vans, GPS coordinates matching Kincaid's properties, email threads between his personal account and known traffickers. Each piece of evidence was dated, documented, and damning. The crowd's murmurs turned to gasps. Phone cameras rose everywhere. A woman screamed, "This is lies!" Kincaid shouted, but his face had gone pale. "This is a hack! Security!" His bodyguards moved toward the control room, but Ben's team had planned for this. The doors had been electronically locked. Roberts had made sure of that. Senator Howard Kincaid, a familiar voice, boomed through the speakers. Ben recognized it as Agent Voss's last recording, the one they'd found on his phone after his death. "We have evidence linking you to human trafficking operations across 3 states. The FBI has been building this case for shut it off." Kincaid abandoned the podium, heading for the side exit, but FBI agents were already streaming through every entrance, their blue windbreakers stark against the formal crowd. Ben had made sure Vivian's evidence reached the right people at the Bureau, the ones who couldn't be bought. The senator spun around, looking for an escape route. The cameras followed his every move, broadcasting his panic to the world. His polished facade crumbled as agents approached with handcuffs ready. "Senator Howard Kincaid?" An agent announced, clearly, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "You're under arrest for human trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder." The click of the handcuffs echoed. Through the hall, camera flashes exploded like lightning. Kincaid's head dropped, his shoulders sagging as agents led him away. Ben stood quietly among the chaos, watching justice unfold. His hand brushed the photo in his pocket, the one of Lily and Vivian collecting shells at the pier. "We got him," he whispered. "We got him, Viv." Through his earpiece, he heard Torres's voice. "Package secured. All units clear." The evidence was out. The truth was exposed. And somewhere, Ben knew, Vivian would see this and know that he'd kept his promise, know that the monster who'd hurt so many was finally facing justice. News reporters swarmed forward, their questions overlapping. "Senator, did you orchestrate the trafficking ring? How long has this been going on? What about the murdered FBI agent?" But Kincaid said nothing as he was escorted out, his political career ending in handcuffs and scandal, broadcast live across every major network. Ben slipped out quietly during the commotion. His part was done. The old guard had come through. Now it was time for the FBI to do their job, and for him to focus on the next phase, finding Vivian and bringing her home. Torres met him outside, both of them watching as police cars with flashing lights pulled away from the Civic Center. "Clean operation," Torres said. "Just like the old days." Ben nodded, his expression grim but satisfied. Inside, news crews were still filming, the evidence still playing on loop, and a corrupt senator's empire was crumbling in real time on national television. The flashing lights of police cars and news vans painted the evening streets in alternating red and blue. Ben sat in the back of an unmarked FBI vehicle, his suit jacket draped over his shoulders. His hands were still shaking, not from fear, but from the surge of adrenaline that was finally starting to fade. "Mr. Carver?" A young agent opened the car door. "We need to move you to a secure location. Please come with me." Ben nodded, following the agent to another vehicle. As they drove through the Charleston streets, his mind replayed the chaos of the past hour. The senator's face twisting in rage as the evidence splashed across the giant screen, the crowd's collective gasp, and the swift action of FBI agents flooding the Civic Center. The car wound through unfamiliar neighborhoods before pulling up to a modest 2-story house with drawn curtains. 2 agents stood guard at the front door, their presence subtle but alert. Ben's escort led him inside, where the house's interior buzzed with activity. Agents moved purposefully between rooms, speaking in hushed tones into their radios. "This way, sir," the young agent gestured toward a back room. Ben's heart thundered in his chest as he approached. The door opened, revealing a simple bedroom transformed into a makeshift command center. But Ben barely noticed the equipment or the agents, his eyes fixed on the figure sitting on the edge of the bed, Vivian. She looked up, her face showing the marks of her ordeal. A bruise darkened her left cheek, and her lip was split. But her eyes held the same fierce light he remembered. She wore borrowed clothes that hung loose on her frame, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Ben's legs carried him forward without conscious thought. He knelt beside her, his throat tight with emotion. The room seemed to fade away, leaving just the 2 of them in this moment he'd prayed for. "You made it," he managed to say, his voice rough with relief. Vivian's eyes welled with tears. "Only because of you," she whispered, her hand reaching for his. The touch broke something in both of them. Ben pulled her into his arms, careful of her injuries, but unable to stop himself from holding her close. Vivian pressed her face into his shoulder, her fingers gripping the back of his suit jacket. "Dad, Miss Vivian." Lily's voice cut through the room like sunshine through storm clouds. She burst through the doorway, escorted by another agent, and ran straight for them. Ben shifted to make room as his daughter crashed into their embrace, her arms trying to wrap around them both. "I knew you'd come back," Lily said, her words muffled against Vivian's shoulder. "I just knew it." Vivian laughed through her tears, one arm holding Lily while her other hand stayed firmly in Ben's grasp. "I missed you so much, sweetheart." The agents in the room tactfully moved to the hallway, giving the reunited family their moment. Ben couldn't take his eyes off Vivian's face, still struggling to believe she was really here, safe and alive. "Are you hurt bad?" Lily asked, pulling back to study Vivian's face with worried eyes. "Just some bumps and bruises," Vivian assured her, wiping away tears. "Nothing that won't heal. We kept your cookies," Lily announced proudly. "The ones on the windowsill. Well, we had to make fresh ones every few days, but we never stopped putting them out." Fresh tears spilled down Vivian's cheeks. "You did that for me?" "Every single day," Ben confirmed softly. Lily never lost faith. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. A senior agent entered, his expression warm but professional. "Agent Cross, Mr. Carver, I hate to interrupt, but we need to debrief you both, and the medical team would like to do a proper check of your injuries, Agent Cross." "Of course." Vivian nodded, but her grip on Ben's hand tightened slightly. "Can I stay with Miss Vivian?" Lily asked. Looking between the adults with pleading eyes, the agent smiled. "We've arranged for you and your father to remain here tonight, under protection. There's a lot of media attention right now, and we need to keep everyone safe until things settle down." Relief washed over Ben. The thought of being separated from either of them right now was unbearable. Lily beamed, settling more comfortably on the bed beside Vivian. "The medical team will be here shortly," the agent continued. "Take whatever time you need to get settled." He closed the door quietly behind him. In the temporary quiet, Ben finally allowed himself to really look at Vivian, to catalog every mark and shadow on her face. She met his gaze steadily, her eyes saying everything her voice couldn't. "I never stopped looking," he said quietly. "I never doubted you would find me," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "When I heard the commotion at the town hall, when I saw what you'd done." She shook her head, overwhelmed. "You risked everything. You're worth everything," Ben said simply. Lily snuggled closer to Vivian. "Does this mean you're staying with us now? For real?" Vivian looked at Ben, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. He squeezed her hand gently, and the last of the tension seemed to leave her shoulders. "If that's okay with you both," she said softly. "More than okay," Ben assured her, his heart full to bursting as he watched his daughter wrap her arms around Vivian again. For the first time in years, Ben felt completely at peace. Here in this temporary safe house, with his daughter's laughter filling the air and Vivian's hand warm in his, he knew with absolute certainty that they would be all right. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting warm squares of light across the wooden table where Lily hunched over her math homework. Vivian sat beside her, her bruises now fading to lighter shades of yellow and green. She pointed to a problem on the page with a pencil, her movements careful but steady. "Remember what we learned about fractions?" Vivian asked softly. "Think of it like sharing cookies." Lily's face brightened. "Oh, so if I have 12 cookies and want to split them into 4 equal parts." "That's exactly right." Vivian smiled, watching as Lily worked through the problem. Ben stood in the doorway, a grocery bag in his arms, taking in the scene before him. These quiet moments still caught him off guard. How natural it felt to see them together, how the house felt full again after so many years of emptiness. He set the bag on the counter and started unpacking vegetables. Vivian had insisted on planting a small garden in the backyard as soon as she could walk steadily again. The doctors had recommended light activity for her recovery, and she'd taken to gardening with unexpected enthusiasm. "Need any help with those?" Vivian asked, looking up from Lily's homework. Ben shook his head. "You focus on turning our daughter into a math genius." The word "our" slipped out naturally, and for a moment the kitchen fell quiet. But Lily just grinned and returned to her problems, while Vivian's eyes met Ben's with a soft understanding. Later that afternoon, Vivian stood in front of her garden beds, examining the tiny sprouts pushing through the soil. She'd planted tomatoes, herbs, and flowers, life taking root in neat rows. Ben watched from the back porch as she carefully watered each section. "The basil's coming up," she called over her shoulder, excitement in her voice. "Looks like everything's growing strong," Ben replied, walking over to stand beside her. He noticed she didn't wince anymore when she bent down to touch the plants. "It helps," she said quietly, running her fingers through the soft earth. "Having something to nurture, to watch grow, makes me feel—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Makes me feel like I'm growing too." Ben understood. They were all growing, changing, healing in their own ways. The house itself seemed different now, brighter, warmer. Pictures had appeared on walls that had been bare for years. Lily's artwork joined them, colorful drawings of their little family, always three figures together. As evening approached, they gathered in the living room. The habit had started naturally. A few days after Vivian came home from the hospital, Ben had found his old Bible dusty on the shelf and began reading again. Now it was their nightly ritual. Lily curled up on the couch next to Vivian, while Ben sat in his armchair, the familiar weight of the Bible in his hands. The pages fell open to Psalms, worn from years of seeking comfort there. "The Lord is my shepherd," Ben read, his voice deep and steady. "I shall not want." The words filled the room like a gentle tide, washing away the day's tensions. Vivian closed her eyes, letting the familiar verses sink in. She'd never been particularly religious before, but there was something healing in these quiet moments, in the peace that settled over them all. After the reading, Lily helped Vivian water the indoor plants they'd started, small pots of herbs for the kitchen windowsill. Ben watched them work together, their movements synchronized, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Remember to check the soil first," Vivian instructed, guiding Lily's small finger to touch the earth. "If it's still damp, we wait." "Like patience," Lily said thoughtfully. "Like when you were getting better and we had to wait." Vivian hugged her close, meeting Ben's eyes over Lily's head. They shared a look of understanding, how this child had become the bridge between them, helping them all heal in ways they hadn't expected. Their evening routine had settled into a comfortable pattern. Dinner together at the table, sharing stories about their day. Homework and reading time. Sometimes they played board games. Vivian teaching Lily new chess strategies, Ben attempting to keep up with both of them. The house that had once felt too quiet now hummed with life. Laughter echoed through rooms that had known only silence. The kitchen counter held science projects and art supplies alongside cooking utensils. The refrigerator door disappeared under Lily's drawings and worksheets, marked with gold stars. Even the small changes marked their healing. Vivian's jacket hanging by the door, her gardening gloves on the porch rail, her books mixed with Ben's on the shelves. She'd brought color into their lives, filling empty spaces they hadn't even known were there. Ben found himself smiling more, laughing at Lily's jokes during dinner, sharing quiet conversations with Vivian after Lily went to bed. The weight he'd carried for so long seemed lighter somehow, shared between the three of them. That evening, as they finished cleaning up after dinner, Lily worked on a new drawing at the kitchen table. She held it up proudly. 3 figures standing in front of a house with a garden full of flowers. "That's us," she explained, pointing to each figure. "Dad, me, and Mom. Vivian?" She blushed, looking uncertainly between them. Vivian knelt beside her chair, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. Ben joined them, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. They stood together, looking at the drawing, their family captured in crayon and love, growing stronger day by day, like the plants in their garden, reaching toward the sun. Ben stood in the doorway, a grocery bag in his arms, watching Lily and Vivian at the table. The scene before him felt right, like pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. He quietly put away the groceries, not wanting to disturb their moment. Later that afternoon, while Lily was upstairs working on an art project, the doorbell rang. Ben opened it to find a courier with an official-looking envelope addressed to Vivian. His heart skipped a beat. Official correspondence always made him nervous these days. "It's from the bureau," Vivian said quietly, taking the envelope from Ben's hands. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. Ben watched her face as she read, trying to decipher her expression. Her eyes moved back and forth across the page, and he noticed her shoulders gradually relaxing. "They're offering me an honorable discharge," she said, finally, looking up at Ben. "Full benefits, pension, everything." She let out a long breath. After everything that happened, they're giving me a choice. I can either transfer to a desk position or leave the bureau entirely. Ben leaned against the kitchen counter, his arms crossed. How do you feel about that? Vivian placed the letter on the table and ran her fingers through her hair, a gesture Ben had come to recognize as her way of processing big news. Honestly, relieved. She gave a small laugh. Is that strange? I've been with the bureau for so long, it's been my whole life. But right now, I feel relieved. It's not strange at all, Ben said softly. He could see the weight lifting from her shoulders as she spoke. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, Vivian continued, standing up and walking to the window. Outside, spring was in full bloom, their small garden showing the first signs of the vegetables they'd planted together. Even before this letter came, I want to go back, Ben. I can't. The kitchen fell quiet, except for the distant sound of Lily humming upstairs. Ben watched as Vivian touched the window pane, her fingers tracing the outline of the garden beds they'd built together. Would you like to take a walk? Ben asked suddenly. The weather's perfect, and I think we both could use some fresh air. Vivian turned to him with a grateful smile. I'd like that. They left a note for Lily, telling her they'd be back soon, and stepped out into the mild afternoon. Their neighborhood was peaceful at this hour. A few kids riding bikes, elderly couples tending to their gardens, the occasional dog walker passing by with a friendly wave. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. The azaleas were blooming, painting the front yards in shades of pink and white. A light breeze carried the scent of jasmine from Mrs. Henderson's trellis. I never thought I'd have this again, Vivian said. Suddenly, her voice soft. This feeling of belonging somewhere. Ben glanced at her, noting how the sunlight caught the silver strands in her hair, earned from years of service and stress, now softening her appearance rather than aging it. When I first started in the bureau, she continued, everything was black and white. Good guys, bad guys, justice, and crime. But after a while, you start seeing all the gray areas. You lose pieces of yourself in the shadows. She paused as they reached the small neighborhood park. But here, with you and Lily, I've found those pieces again. They stopped at a bench overlooking the park's small pond. A family of ducks paddled by, the ducklings following their mother in a wobbly line. The funny thing is, Vivian said, watching the ducks, I always thought leaving the bureau would feel like giving up, but it doesn't. It feels like choosing something better. Ben's heart was pounding now. The words he'd been holding back for weeks pressed against his chest, demanding to be spoken. He turned to face her fully. I don't want you to leave, he said, his voice rough with emotion. The words came out simpler than he'd imagined them, but they carried the weight of everything he felt. Vivian's eyes met his, and in them, he saw the same hope and fear that had been building between them over these past months. Then don't let me, she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. The words hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility. Ben reached for her hand, and she interlaced her fingers with his. They sat there together, watching the ducks, feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces and the steady rhythm of their joined hands. The neighborhood continued its peaceful afternoon around them. Children laughing in the distance, birds calling from the trees, the soft whisper of wind through the grass. But for Ben and Vivian, the world had shifted ever so slightly on its axis, realigning itself around this new truth they'd finally spoken aloud. Their walk home was unhurried, their hands still linked, both of them savoring the weight of the moment. As they approached their front yard, they could see Lily in the window, waving excitedly at them. Vivian waved back with her free hand, and Ben felt her grip tighten slightly on his fingers. A month passed like a gentle breeze, each day bringing more certainty to their shared lives. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Ben sipped his coffee, watching Lily help Vivian water the small herb garden they'd started on the windowsill. The basil and mint were already sprouting, reaching toward the light. Dad, can we have pancakes? Lily asked, carefully setting down her little watering can. Sure, sweetie. Let me just... Ben started, but Vivian interrupted with a mysterious smile. Actually, I was thinking we could go out for breakfast. I have something to show you both after. Ben raised an eyebrow. Vivian had been sneaking phone calls lately, disappearing for short periods during the day. He'd noticed, of course, his security training never quite turned off, but he trusted her completely now. They drove to their favorite diner, the one where Lily always ordered chocolate chip pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. The familiar bell chimed as they walked in, and Sarah, their usual waitress, waved them to their regular booth. "The usual?" Sarah asked, already scribbling on her notepad. "Yes, please?" Lily bounced in her seat, making both adults smile. Over breakfast, Vivian seemed to vibrate with nervous energy. Her fingers tapped against her coffee mug, and she kept checking her phone. Ben reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. "Better than okay," she replied, squeezing his hand. "Just wait." After they finished eating, Vivian drove them through familiar neighborhoods, but then turned down a street Ben didn't recognize. The houses here were modest but well kept, with small yards and friendly front porches. She pulled up in front of a pale yellow bungalow with white trim and a wraparound porch. "What do you think?" Vivian asked, turning off the engine. "About what?" Ben looked confused. "About our new home." The words hung in the air for a moment. Lily's eyes went wide with excitement, but Ben just stared at Vivian, trying to process what she'd said. "Our what?" Vivian reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it and removed a deed. "I used the reward money from the case." The Bureau was very generous, considering how many trafficking victims we helped rescue. Ben started to protest, but Vivian pressed a finger to his lips. "You already gave me a home, Ben. I just signed the papers. Dad, can we see inside?" Lily was practically bouncing in the back seat. They got out of the car, and Vivian led them up the stone path to the front door. She pulled out a key ring. With 3 keys, one for each of them, Ben realized with a start. The door opened to reveal hardwood floors that needed a little polishing and walls that could use a fresh coat of paint, but Ben could immediately see the potential. "It's perfect," Lily declared, running from room to room. The living room had built-in bookshelves and a bay window with a cushioned seat, perfect for reading. The kitchen was smaller than their current one, but had updated appliances and plenty of natural light. 3 bedrooms upstairs, though one was tiny and would make a better office or craft room. "Vivian, I can't let you." Ben started again, but she took both his hands in hers. "Ben Carver, you took me in when I was running for my life. You risked everything, your job, your safety, your daughter's security, to help me. You gave me shelter, but more than that, you and Lily gave me love when I'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of a family." Her eyes glistened with tears, but her voice remained steady. "This isn't just about buying a house. It's about building a future together. All 3 of us." Ben looked around the room, seeing not just what was there, but what could be. Family photos on the walls, holiday celebrations, quiet evenings reading together, movie nights with popcorn and blankets, a lifetime of memories waiting to be made. "Dad," Lily called from upstairs, "there's a window seat in my room too." He chuckled, the sound thick with emotion. "I take it you already know which room is yours?" "The one with the purple walls." Her voice carried down the stairs, full of certainty. Vivian laughed, wiping away a tear. "I might have mentioned that room would be perfect for her when I was looking at the house." "When do we move in?" Ben asked, finally accepting this incredible gift. "This weekend, I've already arranged for movers, and your team volunteered to help." They said something about owing me for giving their favorite grumpy Marine his smile back. Ben pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "I love you," he whispered. The words simple, but carrying the weight of everything they'd been through together. "I love you too," she replied, then added with a grin. "Even if you are a grumpy Marine." Lily thundered back down the stairs, a whirlwind of excitement. "Can I paint my room? Can we get new curtains? Can we plant flowers like at the old house?" "Yes to all of that," Vivian said, pulling away from Ben to hug Lily. "This is our home now. We can make it exactly how we want it." Ben watched them together, his heart full. From that stormy night at the museum to this moment, their lives had changed in ways he never could have imagined. What started as an act of kindness had grown into something beautiful and permanent. "Lily," he said, "why don't you show Vivian your ideas for your room? I need a minute to check out the backyard." He stepped out onto the back porch, taking in the small but well-kept yard. A massive oak tree provided shade, its branches perfect for a future treehouse. He could already picture summer barbecues, birthday parties, and quiet evenings watching the sunset. Through the window, he could hear Lily and Vivian's excited chatter about paint colors and furniture arrangements. The sound of their happiness, the promise of this new chapter in their lives, filled him with a profound sense of peace. Sometimes the best things in life came from taking a chance on a stranger in need, from following your heart even when logic said otherwise. Ben took a deep breath of fresh air and smiled. They were home. The Sunday morning dawned clear and bright, painting Charleston in shades of golden possibility. Ben stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his light blue button-down shirt, the one Vivian had picked out for him last week, saying it matched his eyes. The familiar scents of coffee and maple syrup drifted up from the kitchen where Vivian and Lily were finishing breakfast. "Dad!" Lily's voice carried up the stairs. "We're going to be late for the pier." Ben smiled, taking one last look in the mirror. The man looking back at him seemed younger somehow, the worry lines around his eyes softened by joy rather than etched by concern. He grabbed his wallet from the dresser and headed downstairs. The kitchen was alive with morning energy. Lily bounced on her toes near the door, wearing her favorite yellow sundress. Vivian stood at the sink, wiping down the last of the breakfast dishes, her dark hair caught in a loose braid over one shoulder. She turned when she heard his footsteps, and the smile she gave him still made his heart skip. "Someone's excited about the pier," Vivian said, nodding toward Lily, who was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Can we get shells again?" Lily asked, already holding the little mesh bag they used for collecting. "Like last time?" "Of course, sweetheart," Ben replied, reaching for his car keys. "But this time, let's try not to. Bring home half the beach." The drive to the pier was filled with Lily's chatter about the shells she hoped to find and the seabirds she wanted to watch. Ben drove carefully through the Sunday morning traffic, one hand resting easily on the steering wheel. Every now and then, he caught Vivian's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing silent moments of contentment. The Charleston Pier stretched out before them, wooden planks weathered by salt air and countless footsteps. The ocean breeze carried the familiar mix of salt water and sunscreen, while seagulls wheeled overhead, their calls mixing with the steady rhythm of waves against the shore. "Remember to stay where we can see you," Vivian called as Lily darted ahead, her sandals making soft thumping sounds against the wooden boards. Ben and Vivian followed at a slower pace, their shoulders brushing. The touch was casual, comfortable, the kind that comes from sharing a life together. Other families dotted the pier, parents watching, children, fish, couples holding hands, grandparents pointing out boats to wide-eyed grandchildren. "Hard to believe it's been a month since we moved in," Vivian said softly, pausing to lean against the railing. The breeze played with loose strands of her hair, and Ben resisted the urge to tuck them back. "Feels like we've always been there," he replied, watching Lily crouch down to examine something interesting between the boards. "Like we've always been. A family," Vivian finished for him, reaching for his hand. They walked on, following Lily's meandering path down the pier. She stopped every few feet to point out boats or ask questions about the fishermen's catches. Ben answered patiently, drawing from memories of fishing with his own father decades ago. The afternoon sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. They'd walked the length of the pier twice, Lily's mesh bag now full of carefully selected shells and smooth stones. Other families were starting to pack up their fishing gear and coolers, heading home for Sunday dinner. Lily skipped back to them, her cheeks pink from the sun and wind. She grabbed both their hands, positioning herself between them like she belonged there, because she did. The three of them walked together, their shadows stretching long behind them on the weathered boards. "Can we get ice cream, Mommy?" Lily asked, looking up at Vivian with hopeful eyes. Ben felt Vivian's slight start of surprise. It was the first time Lily had called her that. The moment hung suspended, fragile as a soap bubble in sunlight. Then Vivian's face softened into a smile that held all the warmth of the setting sun. "Absolutely, sweetheart," she answered, her voice steady despite the tears Ben could see gathering in her eyes. They made their way to the small ice cream stand near the pier's entrance. Lily got chocolate with rainbow sprinkles, Vivian chose vanilla with caramel sauce, and Ben stuck to his usual rocky road. They found a bench facing the water, Lily between them, all three watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The sky blazed with color now, orange and pink reflecting off the water's surface. Seabirds made their final passes over the waves, heading to their evening roosts. The breeze had gentled, carrying the sweet scent of their ice cream mixed with salt air. Ben looked at his daughter, chocolate ice cream on her chin, pure happiness radiating from her face. He looked at Vivian, who was watching Lily with such tender love it made his throat tight. The moment felt perfect, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. This was their life now, built from trust and courage and love. He wrapped his arm around both of them, drawing them close as the last rays of sunlight painted the world in gold. Everything that had led them here, the stormy night at the museum, the danger, the fear, the hope, it had all brought them to this moment, this bench, this sunset. "Welcome home," Ben whispered, his heart full to bursting with gratitude and love. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder, and Lily snuggled closer, still working on her ice cream. Together, they watched the sun sink into the ocean, painting tomorrow's promise across the endless horizon. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ben Carver, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.